Hello everybody, my name's Ray, and as for the name, I love to read. Now, today's video is about the Read Harder Challenge, and this is Book Riot's Read Harder Challenge. We're on the 11th year of it, and I haven't done it the last few years because the prompts have been a little bit too niche, a little bit too specific, so I've kind of radiated to more general book challenges such as Pop Sugar. But if you've seen my previous video on the Pop Sugar Challenge this year, I was a little bit disappointed with the prompts, and instead of doing my usual thing, where I try to find books immediately for every single prompt, I forage the internet, I go through my shelves, I desperately try and find books that will suit each and every prompt. I haven't really had that this year, so I thought I'd dip my toe, spread my, broaden my search a little bit and check out some other reading challenges. Some of you were kind enough to leave in the comments various challenges that I hadn't even heard of. So thank you for bringing those to my attention. But I thought maybe I'll have a look back at the Book Riot's Read Harder. They're in their 11th year now, and I thought I'd see what they had to offer. And the prompts are splendid. So I was really excited. There's only 25 of them, so that's half the number in Pop Sugar and just under half of, say, the 52 book club prompts. And yeah, I'm excited. And I had that feeling that I normally get with Pop Sugar, where I go around just trying to satisfy all the prompts and see what's on my TBR that may fit. So I'm going to go through the prompts today, tell you what I like about them, and make some suggestions. So some of them are suggestions for you guys, books that I've read that I think would work really, really well for them. And some of them are suggestions for me. So I did a bit of internet searching and I've got some stuff on my shelves. So yeah, as you can see, we've got the more intimate lighting today. I just don't want you to see my face, really. I'm looking a bit rough. Before we get started, I just want to say that this weekend, unfortunately, we lost my grandma Eunice, who I was very close to. Yeah, she was very, very special to me. My grandma was a big reader. I feel like, I would dedicate this video to her, but this isn't. This is just going to be a Read Harder Challenge video. It's not going to be particularly exciting, so I feel like I'll wait until I've got a more fitting tribute to her. I'm thinking about maybe rereading Wuthering Heights, which was her favourite book. She was very into her murder. I won't go into too much detail now, but yeah, this is my grandma here with my granddad. You probably can't see it because of the reflections, but yeah, she was a very big part of my life, and yeah, she was a special woman. She was she had a very dark sense of humor, but she was also one of the kindest people I've ever met. She always just wanted the best for us and loved us unconditionally. So yeah, it's sad that we have to say goodbye to her, but we've also got lots and lots of happy memories. So this video, I'll do you a better one, Grandma. This one's not for you. I'll do you a better one. But today, like I say, we're going to go over one of our shared passions, reading. And I'm going to take you through the prompts because they really are very good this year, and I was excited to read them. Now, please, 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 if you have things that you think would be up my street and you think I should be reading them, then get them in the comments. Tell me what your suggestions are. I would love to hear from you and love to know what you think. Part of the fun of these challenges is discussing them with people. I've always tried to rope my friends into it too, even the ones that read about, 3 or 4 books a year. I'm still like, let's give these challenges a go together. It doesn't matter whether you finish them or not. Now, the special thing about Read Harder is it encourages you to try things that are outside of your comfort zone, and think outside the box, read more diversely. But as you will see, there are lots of just simple fun prompts as well. So really good mix this year. Don't know who set the challenge, but you've done a very good job if somehow you've made it to my little corner of the internet here. So without further ado, Read Harder 2025. So the first prompt is read a 2025 release by a Black or Indigenous person of colour. This is a great prompt because two reasons. It obviously encourages diversity reading, and also it means that I'm allowed to buy another book because I don't have any books that have been released in 2025 yet. So yes, I approve of that prompt for that reason. I know that Cursebound is coming out, which is the sequel to Feybound, and you know there's absolutely loads of books out there. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with that because you'll probably be sick of hearing me talk about new books that are out over the following year. Number 2 is one that is a great prompt because I don't often do a lot of rereading, and that's reread a childhood favourite book. Now, this is something that you can't recommend to other people because you don't know what their favourites would have been. But the ones that I'm thinking of, and I'm going childhood here, I'm not going young adult, because for a start, Teenage Ray had a terrible, terrible taste in books. I'm going to reread some of those, but we're going childhood. So I love the Nancy Drew mysteries. I know that some of my friends over on Litsy have been reading through Nancy Drew. It was only like last year or the year before that I found out that Carolyn Keene was not in fact a real person. I think most of the novels were written by the same person, but Carolyn Keene, an alias, a nom de plume, as it were. So I was very irritated for not having known that before. But I love the Nancy Drew mysteries as a kid. Will it bring me joy, or will it will it ruin my childhood? Who knows? But I love a good mystery. So yeah, up for that. Magic Faraway Tree, that was a good one when I was a kid. I understand they have changed the children's names, which personally, you know, I can see why they did it, but I wouldn't have done. Maybe The Worst Witch. Like, The Worst Witch came out way before Harry Potter. It was my kind of original going to witch school book, and I remember absolutely loving it. I've got actually my childhood copy. Those are the ones that I'm hoping might make the. It just depends which one I find first, or which one I'm in the mood for, really. Yeah, let me know what some of your childhood favourites are. Maybe there's one that I've forgotten. Number 3, read a queer mystery. Now, I have tons of mystery books, and I'm absolutely certain that some of them will be written by queer authors, have queer love stories in there. One I would say don't read is that Scooby-Doo one I read. What was it called? Meddling Kids. Yeah, don't read that one. That does have a sapphic love story woven into it, but it sounded so good as well. Scooby-Doo meets H.P. Lovecraft. How good does that sound? But my goodness. If you want some examples of very, very chewy prose, check out my Goodreads review. I mean, like, it might still be up your street. Give it a go, by all means, but lower your expectations if that's the route you're going down. It would definitely fit the prompt. Now, I read enough murder mysteries that I will definitely come across one that either has a queer love story or is written by a queer author. I'm absolutely certain that that I'll be able to come across one. But feel free to recommend me some specific ones in the comments, because I can't think off the top of my head, apart from the Scooby-Doo one. It's weird that that's what came to my mind. I believe the protagonist in the Christmas Jigsaw Murders, again, that was a really unimpressive book. Well, it doesn't say you have to read a good one. So yeah, by all means, tuck in. There's going to be lots out there. I might have to do a bit of a Google search on that one. It's one I didn't get around to Googling last night. Number 4, and again, I love this one. Read a book about obsession. Now, what is a better thing to read about than fixation, obsession? When you're in the mind of somebody who's obsessed with someone, it just draws you along into the story. And the one I've chosen for this, and I actually have made a choice here, I think I'm going to be reading A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan, which I believe is about a couple who jointly become obsessed with a woman called Jen, who I think she works with the female partner. But I've heard that this is quite an interesting one, and I do like the kind of people doing unusual things and behaving in unusual ways. I love that kind of book. So, and I think it was one of my Goodreads friends. It was their Goodreads review that brought my attention to it. I don't think what they said was universally positive, but it was interesting enough for me to think, oh, I'll give that a go. And one that I personally would recommend for this one is I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. This book has so much to say about racism, about misogyny, about double standards, about relationships. And it's all done through the lens of a person who is unhealthily infatuated with someone who obviously doesn't have her best interests at heart. And you both relate to it, but also the character is very extreme. So although you relate to them, it's also they're also, I mean, they're not unlikable per se, but they're complicated. And when I've read interviews with the author, Sheena Patel has said that it was quite good writing someone who's a bit of an anti-hero like that. It's a very short book. It's written in a very snappy way, and it is so smart. So if you want to read a book that incorporates literary fiction, social commentary, and that will definitely tick off prompt number 4, I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, that's my recommendation. Number 5, read a book about immigration or refugees. And again, this is one of those prompts that's characteristic of Read Harder, that gets you to consider things from other people's experience, and that just helps you just widen your circle of empathy, really. So I really like this prompt. I'm either going to read Mexikid, which is a comic as in like graphic novel, rather than funny, but it might be funny, I don't know, I haven't read it yet, a comic memoir, and Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I believe that would also fit the prompt, and that's been on my TBR forever. It's supposed to be a really good work of literary fiction. So these two are the ones that I'm going to go for. Although when I did a bit of a look online, I also found a couple of titles that I was interested personally in reading. So The Ungrateful Refugee by Dina Nayen. And if I've said any of these names wrong, it's because I've written them down in my handwriting, and my handwriting is a bit swirly. So I apologise. And How Migration Really Works by Hinde Haas. So those two titles really caught my eye as in non-fiction works that talk about experiences of immigration. Ones that I have already read that I think might be good selections. So one is The Optician of Lampedusa, and that is by Emma Jane Kirby, and it's about refugees coming on a boat to the Isle of Sicily from North Africa, and basically they get shipwrecked. I believe there's a disaster on the boat coming over, and it's about their rescue and about just some everyday people who get involved in this rescue, and about what happens after. And it was a really eye-opening look at the immigration process. It was a while ago that I read it, non-fiction read. And The Good Immigrant, which is a selection of writings from various migrants to the UK. And he just talks about all the different experiences, some positive, some negative, some mixed. And it's such a it's such a diverse essay collection that, you know, it's impossible to kind of summarize it, but it's a very, very interesting read, and I would recommend it to anybody who wants to know more. So yeah, those would be the recommendations from books I've already read. Number 6, read a standalone fantasy book. You would think this would be easy, but people just keep writing sequels. I think I'm going to go with Babel. It's about time I read Babel. I should have read Babel 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, or whenever it came out. R.F. Kuang's amazing, and this is supposed to be absolutely fantastic. It's dark academia. It is set in Oxford, in a fictionalized Oxford. And yeah, I've been meaning to sink my teeth into it for a long while. I think I have about 4 copies of it. So that's because they keep bringing out beautiful, beautiful copies and with beautiful stencil designs on the edges. But yes, so that is my choice. Please don't write a sequel in the next, please don't write a sequel in the next 2 years. Next 1 year, sorry. Please don't write a sequel in the next year. Because otherwise it won't fit the prompt. Yeah, so Babel is a good choice. The Once and Future King by T.H. White, I believe that stands alone. It is an Arthurian fantasy, and I meant to read it a long time ago, and the only reason I haven't is because it's really chunky, and I just haven't had the time for it, but it's supposed to be an absolute classic. So yes, those are the 2 that I've got my eye on for that prompt. Number 7, read a book about a piece of media that you love. So, for example, a TV show, a movie, or a band. This is something, this is broadening my reading, because I don't tend to read about stuff that I like. It's not something I do. I don't read about other media, really. You know, a book about video games, perhaps. I tend to just look at the pictures, though, and remember how good it was. And like I say, musicians, I tend to just listen to the music. So yeah, but I know what I'm going to read for this one anyway. I'm going to read Poirot and Me. Poirot and I think it's Poirot and Me. Sorry, my brain isn't working, so my grammar might not be so brilliant today. By the one and only David Suchet. David Suchet, who I went to see at the Theatre Royal in Nottingham, and he's just wonderful. He is such a talented actor. The way he's very method with it. He fully embodies that character. He is such an intellectual. Like the way he was describing how he came up with the accent, the way he fully gets into character. So I've got a lot of respect for him, and he did a lot of he did some monologues for us as well, which is a little bit different. He's a talent. Also, a fact about David Suchet, one thing that I thought was really lovely is that he fell in love with his wife at first sight. And yeah, he took one look at her and was like, that's the woman I'm going to marry. And I don't know, I love that. The romantic in me. I know insta love is not a popular trope, but that warmed my heart. It just, he's a romantic just like me. So that's what I'm going to read for that. And again, it's a personal one, like your favourite childhood book. What do you enjoy reading? What do you enjoy media-wise? So yeah, interesting. Number 8, read a literary fiction by a Black or Indigenous person of colour, someone LGBTQIA+, and/or a disabled author. Now, again, we've got lots of choices, but I think I'm going to be reading something by Percival Everett for this. He is a Booker nominee. He was shortlisted with James, which is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the point of view of James, who's the enslaved person that Huckleberry ends up floating down the river on a raft with. And I've heard great things about Percival Everett's writing. So yes, I'm looking forward to that. And he also wrote a book called The Trees that I've got on my shelf. So that's an option. And if you want to read some brilliant sapphic literary fiction, The Safekeep by, I think it's by Yael van der Wooden. Don't actually. I mean, I'm assuming that she's writing in own voices because it was very, very well done. But that was a beautiful, beautiful book. Miranda July, All Fours. That was an interesting experience. Yeah, so yeah, I believe she's bisexual. Apologies if I get any of this information wrong. This is based on what I've kind of read on social media, and often people's identities evolve and things. So, but my understanding is that she's bisexual, and that it's kind of a semi-autobiographical novel. A lot of novels down as being semi-autobiographical. You never know exactly how autobiographical it gets. You know, if it's just loosely based on their experiences, or whether it's just, you know, their diaries. So yeah, that was a very, very interesting book. Patrick Gale wrote a rather lovely book called A Place in Winter, I think it was, which was about two men falling in love. Beautiful book, beautiful writing. Again, I probably should check that these are own voices before I recommend them. A lot of the books about disability that I've read have been non-fiction books, and I believe there was an excellent bibliography at the back of Disability Visibility, which was by Alice Wong. Obviously, classics like The Diving Bell and The Butterfly. That was written by a French gentleman with locked-in syndrome. I feel like I should know more. I feel like I should know more in terms of books by disabled authors, because there were definitely some that I had on my TBR when I read the bibliography in the back of Alice Wong's book. If you haven't read it already, Disability Visibility is an essay collection. Obviously, if you're doing Read Harder Challenge, you'd be looking to diversify your reading anyway. And it's a very interesting collection of essays with a very extensive bibliography, which suggests, but I believe it's books that represent disability as opposed to books by disabled authors. I will have to check that out again. And obviously, own voices is what we're looking for here. I'm going to have to do a bit more research into that. But yeah, get in my comment section. Tell me, what books by disabled authors am I missing there? I'll probably think of loads as soon as I turn the camera off. Number 9, read a book based solely on its setting. So for this, I'll probably just pick a book with a really pretty cover and be like, yep, there. I mean, I could read books that are set in Japan, because that's one of my favourite places that I haven't been yet. If you want a book that really evokes a setting of retro Japan, Inspector Imanishi Investigates by Seishi Matsumoto, I believe it's by. That's really that it really evokes a sense of place. Anything by Masako Tagawa, anything by Murakami, you'll get a real idea of Japan. At least as far as I'm aware. Obviously, I've never been there myself, but they really do evoke a strong sense of place. I might pick something like, oh, I've got some. I'm trying to pick it up. I'm just going to flash it up here. The Teller of Small Fortunes. Look at this cover. I want to be there. It's lovely. I mean, that is a cover that I bought. That's a book I bought just because of the cover, and it looks like something like out of an Amy Stewart illustration, out of an Amy Stewart artwork. You know, one of those jigsaws that I just want to fall into. So yeah, I think this would be a good pick for me. Babel probably too, to be honest. But we're not double dipping. We're doing one book per prompt. That's what I'm doing. Unless it gets to the end of the year and I start panicking. 10. Read a romance book that doesn't have an illustrated cover. That's impossible. They all have illustrated covers. Like, are we going to count? I mean, do we mean like illustrated as in like, you know, like this? Because this is a very clear illustration. I mean, most of the Bridgerton novels have kind of either TV series covers. I've got this version, Is this illustrated? It's got an illustration on it. I don't really know. I can't really think of a book, because most books have some kind of graphic on the front. Maybe I'll try and find one that has like a pattern on or something, like a vintage classic or something. The thing is, I might be taking this a little bit too literally. I take everything extremely literally. I think the spirit of the prompt is to read a romance book that's got a, kind of not a standard, as you'd expect, kind of cartoony cover. Because a lot of romance novels have that similar aesthetic, and it's wanting you to pick something a bit different, I think. At least that's how I read it. I think this counts. Do you think this counts? Yes or no? Answers in comments. Chill out, Ray, I think is probably going to be the answer. But I'm terrible at doing book challenges because I take everything really, really literally. It's like, no, it's cheating. And then by the end of the year, I've only like read 11 books out of 50 or whatever. And it's like, why did you bother doing it? You might as well have done it in a looser way and got some extra points. But no, if I'm doing the reading challenge, I'm failing it on my terms. Okay, read a work of weird horror. One of my favorite prompts. Love weird horror. Actually, I hate horror. But I also love it. I love it and I hate it in equal measures. This year I've read a lot of horror, and I certainly have some recommendations for you on this one. Books that I found weird and horrible. We've got Bunny by Mona Awad. That was a fever dream. I think I've recommended it in previous videos. It classes as a horror, I would say, although, it's been variously suggested to be kind of dark academia, feminist literature. In fact, one of the later prompts is a genre blending book, and Bunny would fit for that as well, because it's not really clear what this book is, but it's certainly weird, and it's, I would say, horror. Brainworms by Alison Rumfitt. I think I read this as a blind date with a book. It is the sort of book I never would have picked up without that prompt, just because because of the front cover. I'm not going to stick it up here. It's gross. think person drowning in worms. It's like my least. If you said to me, like, what would be your absolute, the thing you'd least like to kind of see a picture of, that's well, no, the least. Actually, now I'm thinking of loads of things. Now I'm thinking of loads of things that would be worse. But it's up there. It's not nice. The British cover is a little bit more subdued, but it still made me go, ooh, when I opened it. Now, this book is by Alison Rumfitt. It's her second book. Her first one was called Tell Me I'm Worthless, and is more of a haunted house novel, I believe. I am planning on buying and reading that. I don't know whether it's weird, though. Brainworms, very weird. It's satirical as well. It's pretty extreme, it's pretty grotty, but if you want to read something that's going to challenge you and that's going to take you way out of your comfort zone, go for Brainworms. That would be a perfect one to choose from the prompt if you can handle it. All the trigger warnings, though, like literally all of them. What else? Oh, so I'm thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. That was weird and that was horror. Did it make full sense by the end? No. No, it did not. Quite a lot of horror does not make a lot of sense when you get down to it, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really original, really creepy, lots going on. Want to read it again. And I've got 2 more of his books on my list, We Spread and Foe. Don't know if they class as weird horror. Certainly, they're probably what I will go for, something like that. Venice Underground by Jeff Vandermeer, a personal favourite of my dad. Not a personal favourite of mine, but Jeff Vandermeer is a bit of a big name in weird fiction. He is, his books are weird. They're creative. Venice Underground is like a Bosch painting come to life. It's about as weird as you can get. Because my dad loved it so much, I introduced it to my book club when I lived in York. Did they think it was good? No. But my dad loves it, and if you want something that is weird, it is so in the spirit of this prompt. You should really go for it. It's yeah, it's an experience. If you want something a little less extreme and a little more literary, perhaps, Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield was gorgeous. It is a horror. Yeah, I mean, I labeled it as horror in my head after reading it and during reading it, without knowing that that's how it was seen. I thought it was just a work of literary fiction, maybe perhaps magical realism, but reading it, you get the dread. There is a sense of dread. There is a sense of, yeah, there is a sense of horror in this book, and yeah, it's good. It's really good. I've got Julia Armfield's next book ready to go. It's also a work of literary fiction by a queer author, so yeah, that could also go on the list. Again, assuming this is own voices. I couldn't tell you 100% because I'm not massively au fait with all of the authors' bios, but yeah, it's a beautiful book, but definitely a horror vibe. You could easily choose something by Shirley Jackson for this prompt as well if you want to go a bit more vintage. Ones that I'm thinking of, so when these are ones that kind of came up on a Google search. So Seed by Anya Alborn. I've had Anya Alborn recommended to me before, but I believe the ones on my list are different books from that. So I don't know whether they'd class as weird or just straight up horror. But Seed apparently is, and that's got a weird cover, so that would definitely qualify, I think. And I might even have it on my Kindle. There's a lot on my Kindle that I haven't 100% gone through yet. I've been told that Mexican Gothic and Tender as the Flesh, two very popular books, and The Only Good Indians by Stephen Wynne. Is it Stephen Wynne Jones? Stephen Wynne Jones, I think. I've been told that these three books would also qualify for this, but I mean, like I say, I thought they were more kind of literary horror, so don't know how weird they are. Like, for me, weird fiction has to be really weird rather than, has to be a bit kind of, what were they even thinking when they wrote that? That's just on another planet. But, you know, everyone can interpret that differently. So, you know, there's lots of options there. One of my favourite prompts. Number 12. This is one I'm not going to give you any recommendations for because it's reader staff pick from an indie bookstore, preferably your local one. And I have some friends who's just opened a bookstore. So if you live in the region of Royal Tunbridge Wells, you now have a rather beautiful looking bookstore called Station Books. If for some reason you've seen this video and you live near there and you decide to go in, just tell them that Ray sent you. They'll probably say, which Ray? Which Ray? And tell them that you want a recommendation for Read Harder. And I'm sure they'll be happy to oblige. Laura and Ross, they are both awesome people who have rather good taste. So go and ask them if you don't have a local one. Or even if you do have a local one, go there anyway. It's a little bit far away for me to get there until after Christmas, but if only I could teleport, that would be fantastic. Number 13, read a non-fiction book about nature or the environment. Now, there's absolutely loads of these out there, so I'm not going to make you a big list. I'm going to tell you which ones I'm thinking of going for. So one is The Sixth too many X's. The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Colbert, where the author argues that we are currently in the middle of a sixth extinction, I believe, for a number of different species, a man-made extinction. So that is, yeah, that's already on my list. I already have the paperback. And another one that definitely comes under nature writing is H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. This won all sorts of prizes when it came out. Still need to read it. I like birds. Birds are nice. cute little beaks. You can tell it's getting late and I haven't had any sleep. Well, I have had sleep, but it was all during the day, so just my body clock is all over the shop at the moment. So yeah, so if I'm a little bit giddy, forgive me. What else have we got? Read a comic in translation. I'm just going to go through all my comics and see if I've got any that are translated. One that I have read, obviously, one of the first ones that will come up if you Google this would be Persepolis by Marjan. I'll put it up here. This was an excellent graphic memoir. Again, it's won, I believe, lots of prizes, and it's very, very critically acclaimed. So if you've not read that already, I would highly recommend that you put that as your top pick. I could read some Junji Ito. I'm not going to read any Junji Ito because I'm not going to put any pictures up because I was in Waterstones not long ago. This guy, the body horror, I hate it. It's so effective. It's so effective. If you love body horror, pick something by Junji Ito. Because the holes. I picked up a colouring book by him in Waterstones, opened it up, dropped it nearly. No, thank you. And my friend, who also doesn't like that kind of thing, I was like, hey, do you want to come see something? And she's like, no. I know what you're doing, Ray. Yeah, no, I wouldn't spring that on an unsuspecting friend. Definitely not. But in translation, I believe it was originally written in Japanese. 15, read a banned book and complete a task on Book Riot's How to Fight Book Bans guide, which you can find by going to the Book Riot website on the Pop Sugar thing, and there's a link. Now, I know which banned book I'm going to read. I'm going to read Genderqueer by Maya Kababe. This has been on my TBR for way too long, and it's been top of so many. I think it was one of the most banned of 2023 or 2024 across America. And so I absolutely owe it to him to give it a read, I feel. And then hopefully pass it on to the library once I finish with it. I think, if we're fighting banned books, donating books with topics that are being kind of most kind of challenged probably counts as doing something towards fighting the bans. It's more the type of books that are being banned frequently. Often books that could really help LGBT plus children, and it's just such a shame to see. So fully on board with that prompt, and let's hope some good comes of it. 16, read a genre blending book. Now I will find a genre blending book for myself, but here I am to tell you that the best genre blending authors are Stuart Turton. Yep, I've mentioned before how great he is. He's great. He's a great person. He's really funny. He's really irreverent, and his books are bonkers. So they take hybridizing genres to a new level. Stuart Turton, if you've not read any by him, this is another plug, and I promise you I'm not on his payroll. Blake Crouch also does a fair bit of genre blending, writes sci-fi, thriller, mystery, sci-fi. There's a lot of blending going on there. Again, fantastic author for this prompt. Books that I would have no hesitation in recommending: Dark Matter, Recursion. They're great. Absolutely great. Now, I also read a book called Black Lake Manor by Guy Morpus that I read recently, and this is a sci-fi murder mystery. So again, and you've got plenty of choice for this. Those are my picks. Probably should think about blending other genres, like romantasy as a genre blend. So any romantasy book would probably fit that, because it blends romance and fantasy. What else have we got? There are kind of dark academia. It's almost like a subgenre with a bit of magic thrown in. Yeah, there's loads. It's a great prompt. Highly recommend. And Bunny, as I mentioned earlier, Bunny would work for that. Read a book about little known history. So my recommendation for you, if you've not already read it, would be The Five by Hallie Rubenfeld. This is the story of the women and the lives of the women who were killed by Jack the Ripper. And Jack the Ripper's story has been fetishized. At the heart of this, we have a truly horrendous crime against 5 women. And this book reminds us of the humanity of these women. We actually know a lot more about them than I would have thought. It paints a really, really grim picture of Victorian England. This book is excellent, and that will be my pick for little known history because, like I say, the focus is so much on the killer himself. It's comes highly recommended by me. I think I'm going to read Helgoland, which is by Carlo Rovelli. I can't remember why I bought it, but it's on my shelf. And apparently it's a story about developing the basis of quantum mechanics in the 20s. That's something that I don't think many people know about. I certainly don't. I certainly don't, and I've tried to read about quantum mechanics, so hopefully maybe if I read about how it was discovered, maybe that'll make it easier to actually get behind the meat of it, because it hurts my brain. Yeah, I think it hurts everyone's brain. Who was it that said, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics? Can't remember who said that, but yeah, made me feel a little bit better. So 18, read a cozy book by a BIPOC author. Now, I think I'm going to go with The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, because I've heard so much about this book. I keep getting told that it's great. It pops up on my socials all the time. And yeah, cozy fantasy looks like my sort of thing. 19, read a queer norm book. Now, I had to Google what this meant because I've not come across the concept before, but this is a great prompt. So a queer norm book is a book where, I've written down the definition, where queerness is as ubiquitous as heteronormativity in our world. So no homophobia. It's a world where different sexualities are accepted, they're part of the fabric of the universe, and they're not discriminated against. So really, these books are a pleasure to read, and yeah, really help to kind of normalize various queer identities. So yeah, there's some that I would recommend here, and the ones that I've read that I would definitely say were worth a read. Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is an epic fantasy feminist retelling of George and the Dragon. There's lots of lovely sapphic romance in there, and it's a fantastic fantasy book. Legends and Lattes, great book. The focus is more on the coffee than the romance, but there's a cute romance in there too. And who doesn't like coffee? House in the Cerulean Sea, adorable, absolute fan favourite. TJ Klune is very wholesome, and this story is adorable. I don't need to tell you to read it because you've probably read it already. I mean, if you didn't take one look at that cover and buy it, then it's lovely. It's really, really lovely. I need to read the sequel. That reminds me, I do need to read the sequel. In fact, that could probably be my pick. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. That is a very wholesome sci-fi series, The Wayfarers by Becky Chambers. Very enjoyable. I've only read the first one. Very enjoyable, and definitely would fit that prompt. On a Sunbeam, which is a graphic novel by Tilly Walden. But beware, Tilly Walden's books tend to get you right in the feels. So, don't say I didn't warn you. For me, I could either read the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I've temporarily forgotten the name of. Sorry. Or A Day of Fallen Night, which is the prequel to Priory. Or Gideon the Ninth apparently would fit that as well. And that I've been meaning to read for a long time. And I've heard some people love it, some people aren't as sold. The Locked Tomb trilogy, which side will I come down on? Who knows? 20. And I'm sure they did this. I'm sure they did this just to annoy me, because nobody writes duologies. And those who do, like, there's not many to choose from. The only duology that... Okay, there's 2 duologies that I read and loved that don't fit this prompt. Although, actually, no, to be fair, Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares does fit this prompt. I think I've got it on my... I've got a couple of versions of it up here. We've got the Litjoy version and Illumicrate version? I don't know. It's beautiful. It's very lovely. Lots of dreaming, lots of butterflies. Lamotte, I think, technically, but it's a really lovely world. So if you've not read Strange the Dreamer, I think it classes as young adult. Although, yeah, it's young adult fantasy duology. That's a good one to go for. The other one was by Daniel Glatoyer, which is Love Virtually, and the sequel, which I think was about a decade later, Every Seventh Wave, which is about an email romance. And I was down for it. Now, what I'm going to read is the Six of Crows duology. I do have the first one. It's by Leigh Bardugo. I've been meaning to read it for a while, so this is a good excuse. The other one on my TBR that I wasn't aware was a duology is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ardier, which apparently is a retelling of 1001 Nights. I don't think I've bought that yet, but it is on my Goodreads TBR. So yeah, I might explore that one as well. The 2 covers that caught my attention when I was doing a bit of Googling for middle grade duologies was Paolo Santiago by Taylor K. Mejia and The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. I like these covers. They're cute. Don't often read middle grade, but if these are the ones I'd go for if I was going for a middle grade one. 4 more prompts to go. How long have I been talking? About 50 minutes. Would probably be less than that after I've cut out all the nonsense. Yeah. Okay, right. Let's see if I can get through this quickly. If you're still watching, well done. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. And wow, I'm very impressed that you've managed to put up with my voice for so long. Thank you. Appreciate it. So 21. Read a book about a moral panic. I think I'm probably going to go for something like Who's Afraid of Gender by Judith Butler. I think that encapsulates the panic element, because Butler is referencing the moral panic in the title itself, so I think that would absolutely be in keeping with the prompt. Often with Book Riot, and I get this impression from previous challenges, often they want you to read books by people who you disagree with. And obviously you don't want to be giving your money to someone who's written some horrible, some horrible opinion, kind of invalidating trans identities, arguing for, kind of anti-immigration or anything like that. I mean, that would be my kind of things that I would, obviously oppose. Anything that's kind of persecuting minorities, anything that, I would obviously not want to be, but sometimes understanding things from someone else's point of view is useful, both so that you can, kind of understand your own opinion and your own views, and also understand other people better, because, there are lots of good people out there who have, views that you might disagree with. And a lot of kind of views that I would probably consider problematic, they're very commonly held views, so it's always useful to arm yourself with information and understanding. So I would say that if you wanted to read a book by someone whose politics you disagree with, for this one, who's on the other side of the moral panic, I think that would be perfectly okay to do for this prompt. I think the wider you read and the better you understand people, I don't think, I think, as long as you're staying true to yourself, but I'm still probably going to, for me, I'm probably going to read Judith Butler's book. My understanding is that Butler is a very good person to read on the subject, that a lot of their ideas are at the forefront. So, and also I already own the book. So this is me. I haven't read it. I'm just going off what people quote online and, and what they go off. But yeah, I'd be very interested to know what sort of books you'd recommend for that. I do like Book Riot in that it does try and broaden your horizons and, get you to read, the views of people that you don't necessarily agree with. So, I think, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. 22, read a holiday romance that isn't Christmas. Romance. Oh, I'm so not in the mood for romance right now. I don't actually. The only one that I can think of that's on my actual TBR is Pumpkinheads, which apparently obviously it's a popular graphic novel set around kind of Halloween time, on a pumpkin farm. I believe it's a pumpkin farm romance. Kind of don't know whether that's what they meant by the prompt, though. They probably want you to learn about the actual festival or the or a celebration that's perhaps maybe non-Western. So a Holly Jolly Diwali, that looks like a good one, by Sonia Lally. Sleepless in Dubai by Sajni Patel. Again, these are ones that the covers caught my eye. There's a couple of Jewish romances, The Matzvah Ball and Kissing Kosher by Jean. I think my handwriting says Meltzer. Anyway, these are possibles. I don't know that much about these celebrations. Yeah, it is still switched on. If you're reading a story, even if it is a romance, I'm not. Sorry, there is no shade on romance at all. It's just that me personally, I'm just not in a very romantic mood at the moment. It's cold outside. I'm grumpy. I just want to be left alone with my books. And maybe some Quality Street. But like not the rubbish Quality Street, not the coconut ones or the ones that break your teeth, just the strawberry creams, please. I've run out of strawberry creams. No, Ray, focus. We've been doing this for a while now. Focus, Ray. Yeah, anyway, so if you've got any better ideas, or if you've read any of those and you think they sound great, drop me a comment. I'll be very interested in knowing what you think. 23, read a wordless comic. Oh, I mean, can't they just say the comic with hardly any words? This is hard. Like finding one without any words at all. Like not even a few. So like when I was thinking about this, I actually thought, have I ever read any comics without any words at all? And I thought that Stages of Rot by Linnea Stort had no words, but when I looked at the images online, there were actually a couple of speech bubbles there. So it's just, I think it will probably be in keeping with the essence of the prompt, but it probably doesn't technically qualify. And the book that I've had the most interest in bookshops that whenever I've opened it doesn't look like it's got any words is Here by Richard Maguire. This is very, very well recognized as a graphic novel. So, but I think there are a few words, just not very many. Do you think I'm allowed to bend it? Do you think I'm allowed to bend the rules a little teeny weeny bit? If not, the ones that on blogs and things that come up the most often: The Arrival by Sean Tan, Congress of the Animals. This looks pretty weird. Un Océan d'Amour, technically in French, but if there aren't any words, I mean, I can read a little bit of French, probably. The Longest Day of the Future, and Sky Rover. So these are the ones that came up on kind of the first kind of blogs and things that came up. They all look fascinating. If I like one of them, mean, they're all so different from each other as well. It's impossible to, yeah. Yeah, it's a great prompt because it really does make you pick something that you've not thought of reading before. And finally, 24. And they all do this in reading challenges when they can't think of anything else. Read a prompt, complete a prompt from 2015. If 2025 is the 11th challenge, then 2015 would be the very first one. And it was a lot more, probably, you know, back then it was read a fantasy, read a romance, or read a book by, you know, someone who is a different gender from yourself. You know, it really, you really can see how the challenges evolved over the years to become more complicated, and, you know, to continue to broaden our horizons. And the ones that I picked that I liked, I've picked like my top 5. So, written under the age of 25. This is going to be the year that I read Frankenstein. This is going to be the year that I read Frankenstein, and I'm going to read it, and it's going to be brilliant. And then I'm going to be like, I'm, you know, here in my 30s, late 30s, and mid 30s. And yeah, and Mary Shelley wrote this classic at what, 18, 19, 20? I mainly know the story of that from the program Drunk History. So, or over 65. I mean, that kind of would go with the Pop Sugar prompt of read the book by the oldest author on your TBR. So if we're double dipping across challenges, I'm not saying I'm going to do all these challenges. I'll probably say I'm going to read about 3 books from each challenge. That's usually what happens. But like I say, no one's going to have got this far into the video. So by this point, I can just say what I want, do a little dance. Yeah, so younger author, older author. An audiobook, it is time I got back into audiobooks. I've only read 1.5. I do find audiobooks are easier for me with non-fiction than fiction. I find it very hard to concentrate. I've been trying to read Michelle Obama's autobiography while going on walks, and it's a good book. It's just my brain wanders. So, you know, my plan is to do other stuff at the same time. So to do tidying, to do walking, to do tidying and walking. And yeah, so audiobook, that'll be a good one for me, I reckon. A guilty pleasure, and it does specify that you shouldn't feel guilty about your guilty pleasures. It is just a term of endearance. I love the term guilty pleasure. You know, sheer joy, things that bring you joy, that you're a little bit shy about liking, but you don't care because it's fun. I've got lots of stuff that I probably wouldn't want to necessarily shout about reading. Except I will anyway, because, you know, there is no shame. You like what you like, you know, but I just love the concept of a guilty pleasure. And also I'm like a character in a book that is well loved by my mum, a book called Paradise Postponed by John Mortimer. And this character really likes bad stuff, because there's just no pressure, and she always says, whenever I say, oh, I really enjoy bad stuff, because, you know, she always says, oh, you remind me of that character in that book. If you're expecting something to be dreadful and you enjoy it anyway, that's where the joy's at. And finally, published before 1850, it is always good to read a book that does not have our modern sensibilities. It's important to remind ourselves that 200 years ago, the world was a very different place. There's so much to read out there. So, you know, read something from a long, long time ago. So there we have it. I've closed my book, and I think I need to go to bed. Oh. Now, thank you so much for staying with me and for listening. And It's been a pleasure. If you enjoyed the video, like. If you want to see more Ray rambling, then press that subscribe button. You're always welcome here. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, because I love chatting about it. It's what makes the community so much fun. So it's been a pleasure. Mwah. And I will see you soon for another video. Take care.